OK, defenses. How do you stop this attack? One way to stop this attack, and it's not something we'll talk about in too much detail, is to use smarter switches. So something you can do is to have a switch or a router inside of your network so that instead of sending the ARP broadcast to everybody, you send the ARP broadcast to one of the switches in your local network. And then the switch maintains a cache for everybody and only broadcasts the request if the switch doesn't have the answer in the cache. So you can think of a switch kind of like a router, but instead of working at layer 3, like the post office that connects local networks, the switch works in layer 2, and it connects people inside of the layer 2 network. So this way, if you want to figure out Bob's mapping, Alice doesn't always have to do a broadcast. She can first check with the switch, and if the switch has the answer, no broadcasting is necessary. And if the switch doesn't have the answer, then the switch still has to do a broadcast. But hopefully, because the switch is maintaining a larger cache, because it's handling everyone's requests, this might reduce the amount of broadcasting that has to be done. And this might reduce the frequency of opportunities for ARP spoofing attacks. So you can try to use smarter switches to help you with this. So not something we'll talk about in too much detail, but it is something you can do to change the structure of your local network so that fewer broadcast requests have to be made. Now, another type of defense you can do is to install some tool on the network that is watching packets go back and forth. And if it notices anything suspicious, it can try to warn the network operator. So for example, if you see one ARP request, and then you see 2 responses getting sent, that might be a sign that something suspicious is going on, and you should maybe alert the network operator that something bad has happened. So that's some possible defenses of ARP. But ultimately, ARP is a pretty difficult thing to defend against, because at this low layer, we aren't really validating anyone's identity. How do you tell the difference between Bob and Mallory? There isn't really any way at this layer 2 to try and distinguish them. So this is why Alice is not able to verify anyone's identity. We haven't really introduced any sort of cryptography yet or any sort of security. So ARP spoofing is kind of something we have to live with, and we'll deal with some defenses at higher layers when we get there. So even though there are some defenses, ultimately this is kind of something we have to live with, and we'll rely on some higher layer fixes to provide security.